Hi there! Some time ago we talked about Shadow of the Beast, the classic game which was published by Psygnosis back in 1989. In that review I sort of made a big deal about the game's extreme difficulty level, as well as about all the dead ends where we were simply forced to restart the game if we hadn't acquired a specific item before reaching them. In retrospect, I may have been a bit too harsh on the game. I mean, don't get me wrong, it is hard, but when I was playing it back in the early 90s, it didn't piss me off as much as it did when I replayed it after all these years, and there are two reasons for that. First, in the early 90s we didn't have things such as quick saves and checkpoints. The only way to finish playing a game was either to beat it, to lose all your lives or energy, or to turn off your Amiga because your mom was shouting your name. Second, games back then weren't as many or as disposable as they are today. Back then, when we bought a game, we would play the fuck out of it and discover things that probably not even its designers would expect us to find. So, stuff like dead ends that were in games such as Shadow of the Beast 1 weren't considered unacceptable as they are today. Having all that in mind, I decided to give a chance to the second game of the series. Let's start with the story. In the game we play the part of Arbron, who has exacted his revenge on Maletoth and has regained his human form. Unfortunately though, that's not the end of his troubles, since the evil wizard Zelek, a servant of Maletoth, kidnaps his sister, aiming to turn her into his monster servant, same as he had done to Arbron himself in the past. Following on Zelek's trail, Arbron travels to the faraway and dangerous land of Karamoon, hoping to find and free his sister. The first thing that you'll notice when you start the game is the huge difference with the first game's color palette. Most of the game's areas are in shades of purple, giving a much darker look to it. Our hero's build and run cycle are the same as in the first game, but he looks way less cool than his predecessor. Personally, I think he looks like a Neanderthal or like a Manowar reject. However, our hero's appearance is not the only thing that's different about him. This time around, Arbron uses some sort of mace-like weapon instead of his fists. This actually makes sense, since by turning back into a human, Arbron lost all of his beastly powers. I admit that I used a trainer to beat the first Beast game. As I've mentioned already, our gaming skills have atrophied after all these years of being pampered by modern game designers. This time, I will try to conjure up my glorious gaming past and beat the game fair and square. Okay, so obviously I'm not gonna be stupid enough to go to the right after all I went through in the first Beast game. Going to the left, hands coming out of trees. Psygnosis did have quite imaginative enemies in their games. It's not frozen, it's loading. Come on. Come on. Okay. Bridge. Actually, these enemies sort of remind me of Agony. This game also had music written by Tim Wright. Demon, flying demon, kill the demon, kill the demon. Good. Okay, whatever you say, buddy. Now, bunch of flying shrimps. I don't think they're ever gonna stop coming, so let's just move on to the left. Oops, where are you going? Wow, he was gonna cut our rope, so I guess it's a good thing that we... Well, what's... Oh, fuck! To activate the cheat mode, as soon as the game begins, go to the right until you've met the first tribesman. Instead of killing him, press A on your keyboard and then type in 10 pints. Now you're invincible. However, as you'll soon find out, that's not going to help you much. Based on my experience as a gamer, I'm willing to bet that Shadow of the Beast 2 boasts the most dead ends in the history of gaming. In fact, there are so many that I could walk you through the entire game simply by numbering them. Come to think of it, that's not a bad idea at all. Why don't we check them all out from the start? Let's start with the guy that we ignored earlier. As it turns out, he's not in the game just for show. If we ignore him or kill him by accident... What we need to do here is press A on the keyboard, which corresponds to the word ask, and type in the word traps. He will tell us that he heard the guards mention an upper or a lower switch. What you should be aware of is that his answer changes every time you play the game. Therefore, noting it down the first time you read it, and then just ignoring the guy every time after that, and trust me, there will be many times after that, isn't going to get you anywhere. Moving on, we jump off to the left. A few meters down the road, we come across a winged demon, who flies off to the opposite direction. If we follow him, we will see him trying to cut the rope which hangs over the chasm. If we don't kill him before he cuts it... The rope is necessary for us to go down and, more importantly, to come back up from the area at the bottom of the cliff. Therefore, killing the demon who is trying to deprive us of that option is mandatory. A bit further down we end up at the switches that the guy who we saved earlier told us about. If we flip the wrong one by accident... If we remember which switch he told us to flip, then the cage lifts us up to Winged Demon HQ. There we will find a pit with a sleeping demon in it and a caged beast right next to him. What we need to do is flip the lower switch without waking up the demon. If we do wake him, then he flips the upper switch, the chandelier goes up and... So what are we supposed to do? At the very end of this area there is a key which opens the beast's cage. After taking that key, we need to jump off the chain and land right next to the cage so as to not wake the demon. And trust me, this is easier said than done. If we make it, the demon gets scared away before he gets a chance to flip the upper switch. Now we have all the time in the world to hit the lower one and be on our way. The reason why we went through all that trouble to flip that switch is that it extends this bridge. After jumping over this acid pit, we see a crane. By hitting these switches, we can move him up and down, left and right, and open and close its clamp. Our goal here is to drop the rock on that spike. Then we'll get the smaller piece of it, which we can use on the seesaw. If we drop the rock in the acid instead... After placing the rock on the seesaw, we need to jump and land on it to lower the cage. If we aren't in the cage when it goes back up... In this area, we kill a dragon and free the friend of the guy that we saved earlier. He will give us a password, which we better note down, since it too is different every time we play the game. Now we can at last go back to the rope and climb down to the lowest level of this area. Further down the road we come across an inn. We knock the door and are welcomed by this good-looking guy. Great job on the manicure. Inside the inn we find a jug which contains some sort of alcoholic beverage. This will come in handy later on. Next we go to the right until we come across the blinking head of a dragon who asks us for a password. After we've typed the password, he lets us in and gives us this scroll. Now we are ready to go back up the rope and explore the eastern parts of Karamoon. After fighting our way through the forest of the savages, we arrive at these floating rocks only to be pelted with a bunch of slime balls thrown by this handsome fellow. After we politely explain to him that covering unsuspecting passers-by in slime is not appropriate at all, he takes his leave, dropping this hatchet on his way. What would you do immediately after having acquired this new weapon? Let's go over to Dr. Commodore with the survey results.
According to our poll, 99 out of 100 gamers would use the hatchet.
Guess what happens if you do use it? As you can see, if you select the hatchet, you can only shoot it for 10 seconds before it disappears from your inventory. So it's obviously a weapon that must be used at a specific part of the game, such as the Hadouken in Shadow of the Beast 1 for example. We'll see that part a bit later. Under the floating rocks we find this thin strip of land. After jumping up and down a couple of times, it gives way and we fall in the infamous crystal caverns. Inside we will find the goblin's lair, and obviously something that we will need in order to progress in the game. The first goblin that we meet runs away. If we go after him we fall into a trap, since this asshole literally pulls the floor right under our feet. The only way to kill him is to use the hatchet that we found earlier. If we are too slow to react, then we fall into the acid lake below and... If we kill him in time, we can move further down the lair. Next stop, the goblin mess hall. We drop down from the chandelier, grab the key and head out. Unfortunately though, the moment we set foot under that cage, we are captured and thrown in a cell. If we try to break the door with our mace, that sadistic jailer sucks us back into our senses. That's where we're going to need the jug that we got from the inn. Before I tell you what we need to do, I'd like to share with you the trouble that I went through to get through this part. Right after I was thrown in the cell, I immediately selected the jug by pressing the corresponding function key, and then I pressed the fire button. Nothing. After pressing the fire button again and again and again, I started to suspect that something wasn't right. At first I read the walkthrough to make sure that this was indeed what I was supposed to do. After confirming it, I started to suspect that maybe the version of the game that I had downloaded was buggy. So I started to download and try different versions of the game from every ROM site I knew. To no avail. Just when I was about to give up, I came across the game's manual completely by accident on lemonamiga.com. So I scrolled down to the game's key bindings, and what did I see? Let's move on. After we offer the jug to the jailer, he passes out. Now we can break the cell door with our mace. It's your heart out, Thor's hammer, and continue to explore. But we won't go that far. What went wrong here is that before going down to the goblin mess hall, we should have gone up here first to flip that switch. That's how we lower this chandelier, which is a necessary step if we ever want to beat the game. Now all that we need to do is climb up the chandelier's chain, grab the ring from the goblins to the left, and then go out the way we came. Before moving on, I'd like to mention two more dead ends, which can only stop us if we hadn't been cheating the game. However, since they would stop us from continuing the game even if we are not dead, I think they should be mentioned. First, we need to make sure that both prisoners remain alive. Second, we need to have both keys that are found within the crystal caverns, so the one found in the mess hall and the one that the jailer drops. Provided that we've secured these two conditions, here's what we need to do in order to go through this part of the game. Okay, so first we select the jug, we offer it to the jailer, he drinks it, he passes out. Now we need to break the cell door. It's going to take a while. Okay, now we need to climb up really fast and kill this guy here on the left before he kills our cellmate. Then we go back down, kill the jailer, get his key, move back up to the second level, open the cell door with the key that we just got, climb up, then go to the left, kill these two, get the ring, very important. Then, oops, missed that jump, that's okay, climb back up, then open the door with the other key, wait for the first, for our cellmates to go first, you see the reason, so that they'll be killed by the trap. Great moral lessons by Psygnosis there, and then we can go back out again. Further down the road we come across a rope, we climb down and end up over the river. Hopping from one rock to the other is easy, but given the fact that we stand to lose all the progress we've done so far, it's highly doubtful that anyone would have a steady hand doing so. However, the game designers decided to cut us a break for once, so if we do fall in the water, we can still save ourselves by grabbing onto this second rope that hangs a few meters down the river. Obviously, if we miss the rope, we climb onto the opposite side of the river, we cross this bridge and become the targets of another unprovoked attack, this time by this scimitar-wielding giant person. Being invincible, we can make short work of him. However, if we do so... So there's a drawback of having infinite energy. Without it, it would be impossible for us to beat him. So we may have come up with the correct course of action, which is to lure him to the middle of the bridge, which will then collapse under his weight, him falling into a watery grave. Of course, this doesn't explain why not doing that would lead us to a dead end, but bear with me and you'll find out soon enough. Further down the road we find the old man Barloom told us about. You may recall that he told us that the old man would help us by using his ring and the scroll. As luck would have it, we happen to hold both these items, and most importantly, we know that in order to give them to him, we need to press O and not the fire button. In return, he gives us a weapon which we'll find quite handy later on. Immediately after we leave his hut, we are attacked by these twins. We turn them into smoke with our mace, and then we dive in the swamp. We take the opportunity to test our new weapon against the frogs that live here. Fortunately, opposite to the hatchet that we'd found earlier, it doesn't seem to have any limitations. We kill this Blood Moon reject with just a ring from our ring, and we feel that nothing can stand in our way. Zelek, I'm coming to get you. Zelek? Zelek! Although it's clear that the full title of the game should have been Shadow of the Beast 2 Go Figure, I think that in this specific instance its designers went a bit too far. Wondering what we missed? Here it is. Without any indication, and after we've exhausted every possibility, we make a leap of faith, Ezio style, down the hole where the bridge troll fell through. We end up in a swamp filled with mushrooms and tiny little bats that come at us by the dozen. At one point we find a horn, and further down we come across a giant talking snail. If you think that's weird, you probably haven't been paying attention. Even so, you must have noticed that throughout the game we came across several chests which, if broken, drop some coins that we pick up Mario style. That's why we need all that money, to pay the snail, so that he will bring us back to Karamoon. Of course, if we missed even one of the 6 chests that are included in the game... The problem here is that some of these chests are not in the most obvious of places. On top of that, before reaching the snail, we have no idea what these coins are for or how many we need. Anyway, provided that we have the money, we press A and then type Karamoon. This way the snail will take us back where we came from. Now we can jump back into the swamp and run all the way to its edge. Suffice it to say that if we didn't grab the horn from the mushroom land... If we do have the horn, we select it, press the fire button, and this rather helpful dragon drops us across the lake. After a short walk through Zelek's castle, we find the man himself, we waste him and... Did you really expect something better?